I can't remember that when I was young, there was so much fear around. As a 9-year-old child, my mother would let me run to the corner shop in London, and she'd put a £1 note in my hand and give me a list of things to get, and I'd run, and the shopkeeper would give me a big smile and give me whatever it is was on that list, and then he'd make sure I was holding the change very tightly in my hand so that it didn't drop out, and I'd run back again. I cannot imagine a mother being able to say to a 9-year-old girl anymore, or a boy, doesn't matter, run down to the corner shop and get this for me. That little illustration just gives me an indication of how society has changed, and there is so much fear constantly, continually, in every situation in life. For example, I know that in London again, when I was growing up, I didn't feel that there was any racial barriers. And then there came a moment when there was a massive influx of people of color from Africa. They were coming in because of a political situation in that country, and so it was Asians who came to London, a big number, and people became very afraid. They were afraid of the immigrants, and the immigrants were afraid of them. And it was a general situation that came up. And so there's a lot of fear on both sides. People who perpetrate violence, but also people who are the victims of violence. And that's not a healthy society. If your actions are going to be fear-based, what happened to love? What happened to being able to see my neighbor and loving my neighbor? And so I see that you can't legislate for these things. Most countries do have some sort of anti-discrimination laws in place, but to what extent can you change people's hearts and minds through laws? I don't think you can. But when people begin to understand something, then there's a shift. And I know for myself, having been in situations where there was racial discrimination, I was lucky. I was already on a spiritual path when I was faced with this. And so once I had to face this, I had to ask myself the question, what's going on inside of me? Am I going to react and run, or am I going to leave the country? What am I going to do? And the first thought that came was that, well, I can't expect the other to change. If I wait for others to change, I don't know how long that's going to take. What I can do is come back to the inner being and get in touch with my own inner core values, and have respect for myself, and have that inner dignity in which no one outside can take that dignity away from me. When I start seeing myself as a spiritual being, then I can identify that whatever it is that's causing the discrimination or the bullying is something that's very external. Color obviously is one thing, gender might be another thing, but in the case of bullying, the other person is seeing me as someone inferior, and so they can oppress me. And the change that happens within the self is that I change my perception of myself. I'm no longer fragile, I'm no longer weak, I'm no longer an employee, but I am an individual filled with all virtues and all treasures, and I come back to that understanding of who I truly am as that inner being.